So our first session today is going to be CCSQ QuickSight Data Visualization presented by Sarah Davis from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Our second session will be Qualitative Analytics Capabilities using NLP with Nikhil Neerhale, and that'll be from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Our third session of the day is A Day in the Life of a Claim with Gennady Sherman from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And our fourth and final session of the day, and to close us out, will be CCSQ DNA Roadmap and Vision with Ken Howard, Alicia Hudson, and Justina Sardin from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And today, I know a few of our sessions did have notebooks yesterday, so if you could not attend yesterday, they are on our Confluence space, and we're working on getting the session recordings up. In the meantime, the decks and the notebooks both are linked already in our Confluence space. And then Nikhil's session today is also going to utilize a notebook, and we did get the Databricks notebook link out there on Confluence as well, which is technically labeled as session 7 today. Okay, so moving on. So our first session of the day is CCSQ QuickSight Data Visualization, and our session today is going to be presented by Sarah Davis. So I'm going to pass things over to her now to give you more information about herself, her background, and then her presentation and what she'll be sharing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Sarah Davis. I'm the Senior Product Owner for the STAR team. We help manage and support the CCSQ QuickSight instance, the BI tool that we'll be talking about today. Why don't we just jump in? Next slide. So we're going to kind of run through everything from what QuickSight is to how do I view QuickSight dashboards, create dashboards, share them, get access to dashboards, and also make sure that we have a lot of new users to CCSQ. So we want to make sure that everyone has the resources necessary for where to go when you have a question. So let's jump in. Next slide. At the highest level, yep, next slide. At the highest level, QuickSight is a BI tool, business intelligence tool. It's fully managed and cloud native on AWS. It integrates with AWS data sources, so things like S3, Redshift, any relational databases, data stores like Databricks, Google, Snowflake. It also allows you the ability to upload a flat file. So if your data doesn't exist or can't get it onto an AWS data source, you can bring that data into QuickSight and make a dashboard out of it. Within QuickSight, you can create interactive dashboards and reports for your end users to interact with and make data-informed decisions. Our QuickSight instance is fully integrated with HARP, so anybody with a HARP or an EUAID can automatically get in to view a dashboard. You don't have to request additional roles, but we'll talk later what additional roles you can request in HARP and what that'll get you. All right, next slide. I'm a very pictorial person, so when I talk about QuickSight and all the things that connect to, I wanted to just kind of bring forward an image of like all the things that we're talking about at the Datacamp. So SAS-Viya, Databricks, and QuickSight, those are part of like the analytic tools that are capable and available behind IDM with your HARP ID. You have the CDR data lake, and that team, has set up that infrastructure there. And the connection between that is focusing on, moving data from SAS-Viya, Databricks, and then making that available to QuickSight via the CCSQ data warehouse in Redshift. So in case you wanted to know, these are kind of like under the covers, the things that are happening, but we'll make it much more simple and interactive with what you can access through the UI of QuickSight. Next slide. So just wanted to highlight and remind everybody what QuickSight offers. So it's a dashboarding report access for anybody with a HARP ID. You have the ability to embed dashboards in another application or website. So you can create a dashboard in QuickSight and have it made accessible in another CCSQ application. We also are working on finalizing the integration between Databricks and QuickSight for sharing data sets, but we'll talk through what that'll look like in a bit. Things that are new for those QuickSight users who've been with us for a while. QuickSight Q is the natural language query that allows users to ask written questions of a dashboard or a report within QuickSight, and they can get the answer back. So rather than having to filter through and have that visual give you an answer. QuickSight Q allows your end users to have that kind of natural language, write a question, ask Jeeves sort of functionality. It is not active, but it is pending CMS approval. Also, just a few weeks ago, Amazon released what they call Amazon Q, and that's a generative BI capability. So like AI, but BI. And what that does is it's really for authors who want to create a dashboard rather than create it manually from like a blank space. It can, you can write questions and create a data story, and it'll create you something that you can go in and then edit. There was a session to kind of try it out. That session has ended, and turning that on in production does require CMS approval, and we do not have that yet. So just thought I would review those things before we get into using QuickSight. Next slide. So we're going to start with how people view dashboards in QuickSight, right? So thinking about your end state first, we'll walk through, next slide, how your users would interact with a dashboard. So after logging into QuickSight, there's a few different ways that one can get to a dashboard. The first one is there's going to be on the navigation panel on the left side, a section called Dashboards. Your users can select that. And then on the right-hand side, all the dashboards that they have permissions to will be visible. Regardless of if it's in a shared folder or not, it'll be visible there. Sometimes users have access to a lot of dashboards, and it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But we've created shared folders for all the various groups. And so you can use the shared folder structure to put dashboards into like a production folder. So you can have your users go to the shared folders, and then they'll have a limited list, and then they'll select that folder, and then it'll be just those dashboards in that folder that they'll see. Additionally, users can search by name. So there's the search field with the lollipop lookup at the top. You can just type in part of the dashboard name and it will filter on the right. Lastly, you have the ability to favorite any QuickSight dashboard asset data set. And once you see the dashboard you want on the right-hand panel, you can click on that empty star. It'll fill it in as a favorite. And then when you go to select favorites on the left-hand panel, you will then get just your list of favorite dashboards or analyses or data sets. I do want to make note that there is the ability to share a dashboard with all users in QuickSight, even if it's stored in your own shared folder and you think that it has like the restricted access. If you make it available for everybody, everybody can see it regardless. Next slide. So as an end user, your dashboards have a lot of navigation features. The first one is that you can have multiple pages or tabs within a dashboard. So you don't have to create one big laundry list of everything. You don't have to create a unique dashboard for each like modification that you want to make. You can make one large dashboard and then have different tabs that have different data sets that are used and visualized and have different controls applied to them. So that way it's one less click or one less location that you need your end users to go to. That said, you want to make sure that you're getting the right content for your users. So there is going to be some editing that I think you should figure out on your end, but that's what BI developers are really good at doing. You also have the ability within the dashboard to select it as your favorite. So in the black header up at the top next to the name, there's an empty star. Your users can look at your dashboard and be wowed by it and be like, yes, this is one of my favorites. I want to get to here all the time. They can select that favorite star from within the dashboard. Dashboards can be set up so that you can actually export the data that's visualized. So using the 3 stacked dots on the far right side, you have the ability to export to a CSV. If that selection is set up on your dashboard, then your users can select it and it'll come up into the download section. And then what comes out, it will be like an Excel file or a CSV file of that data that's in the visual. It won't export like this line graph, for example, but it'll show each of the individual data points on each of the XY axis as a table. Next slide. Oh, we go back one. All right. So the last one is that within a dashboard, as a developer, you have the ability to put in different types of controls. So you can allow your users to filter down and change the visualizations within the data if that makes the most sense for you. And when you do have controls, you have the ability to undo, which is the circle with the backwards arrow. So that will reset all of your controls back to how you set it up. So that way, like, there's nothing filtered. You also have the ability to export as a PDF, and that is in the upper right hand of the blue navigation menu. Also, if you have a lot of controls and filters, it would be good to let your end users know how bookmarks work. So if you know that your users always want to go look at, the state of California and not the other 49 states or territories, they can select their controls, and then they can select the bookmark menu in that upper right-hand blue corner, and then they can add that so that the next time they come back to their dashboard, it will automatically set all of those controls to their bookmark version, so they don't have to go in and manually select the data that they want. That works for some users. Other users, depends upon your dashboard and what you're giving them. But in those use cases, we just wanted to make sure that you as the developers were aware that this is an available option. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we're going to talk now about how you go about actually creating the dashboards that you're going to share with your end users. We'll also cover how to connect to data sets from the S3 workbenches, and then also review what SPICE is. Next slide. All right, just a reminder, there are two different types of broad users within QuickSight. One of them is the reader, which is your end user, right? Who's going to be consuming your dashboard, making decisions based upon that. By default, everybody with a HARP ID is a reader. So when they log in, all they will see is what's on the left navigation panel is down to the dashboards level. They won't see analyses and data sets. You need to request an author role in HARP for you to get the ability to get access to analyses and data sets and actually create a dashboard. And then dashboards in QuickSight are then shared with your readers or your viewers. You also have access to the data based upon your permissions elsewhere within the CDR to those data sets. All right, next slide. So to cover some of the QuickSight lingo, things within QuickSight are called assets. Also, things outside of QuickSight, they call assets. So the first one is your data. That is called a data source. It can reside on AWS and some of their ADO account, some of their database. You can also upload flat files into QuickSight, but that flat file itself is still considered a data source. Once you bring it into QuickSight, it becomes a data set. So that data set is an asset. You can share it with other dashboard developers. You can then use a data set to create an analysis. So that's where you can filter your data, create the visualizations that go along with it. It's this analysis where you're actually going to do your dashboard creation, because in QuickSight, a dashboard is just a published analysis. So the dashboard itself is just the interactive visuals. The analysis has the actual access to the data sets behind it. So this is where the key differentiator is between a reader and an author is a reader only has access to dashboards because analyses have direct access to the underlying data, not the filtered version of the data that's in the published analysis or the dashboard. All right, I am keeping an eye on the chat, so I will try to answer these questions when I think it's best appropriate for the slides, but keep them coming. Next slide. All right, so now you're a dashboard developer or a dashboard author, so you have the ability to create data sets. And when you go and select data sets, you'll have to request this permission from HARP. So based upon your HARP permissions, you'll see a whole bunch of data sets. Either these are data sets that were created by others in your shared folder, or things that we've set up direct access to like an external server for your group. They have little icons next to the names so you can understand and see what the difference is between them. So you have Redshift, SQL Server, the page with the tab with the corner folded in it's a flat file. The elephant is Postgres, and then everything that is next to it on the other right-hand side that has orange is in Spice, which means it's within the super fast parallel compute engine within QuickSight. So Spice and QuickSight are like the same product for AWS. So Spice is not external to QuickSight, it's internal to QuickSight. Sometimes you might see this little lock. That means that users have implemented row-level security on that particular data source. All right. I see the search function reset button that you showed is just now available to all users. You don't see that it's currently working for you. Let me follow up after this session to figure out what could be going on with that. Thanks for the question. Moving on to the next slide. So once you see your data sets, if you don't have an existing data set that you need, but you need to create a new data set, you'll select data sets from the left navigation panel, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you'll select new data set. And then this screen will show up, and the top part will always show you like setting up a new data source. For the most part, I don't think you're ever going to use it because it requires VPC connections set up, which our team manages with other ADO accounts and user permissions and tokens and credentials. So that's the service that we provide. But further down under the existing data sources, the data sources that you have permissions to will be visible underneath this section. So once you find the data source that you want to connect to, you can select it. And next slide. A new pop-up screen will show. So if in this example, the screenshot example, we picked out a CCSQ data warehouse on Redshift, and our user group or our shared folder is the QuickSight support ops. And then I say select or create a data set, and then another pop-up will show up and I get to select the table that I want. Because I'm here to support all the other users, you're going to see additional tables that you yourself won't actually see, but you'll pick the one table that you do have access to. And then from there, you'll have some options. Okay, thank you for the question about using SQL and QuickSight. So yes, once you select your table, you do have the ability, a few options. So let's go through that on the next slide. So once you select your table and you have the ability to either edit and preview, I tend to go that route mostly because you don't want to see my SQL skills. But for those that have really awesome SQL skills, you can use the custom SQL option and you can write out a SQL query against that data table so that you can pull in just whatever you need to from that data table to create the data set that then sits within QuickSight. If you do the edit preview, it'll show you kind of like what that table structure is, what the column names are, what the sample data looks like. And then from there, you can, kind of create a smaller data set, or you can just bring in the whole table and that's fine too. So then you would just add your data in the upper right-hand corner. Next slide. Oh, right. So using the preview data, there's a lot of functionality within that. So first is the query mode. So you can either direct query to like the Redshift or your Postgres database. And you can also have the option then to bring it into Spice, which means you bring that data physically into the QuickSight environment. Questions about, well, when would I want to use Spice? When would I want to use direct query? I think it's going to depend, but let me just walk through kind of what are some of those parameters to help you in making that decision. So one, if you have an uploaded data source, like you have a flat file that you're uploading directly to QuickSight, your only option will be to use Spice. You can also use Spice if you have like small data sets and Redshifts, or if you need to join across different sources, you're going to have to bring that into Spice. Spice is in memory, but it also needs to be refreshed from the data source. So if you have data in Redshift or in a database, but you bring it into Spice, if that database has new data available, it's not going to be reflected automatically up into QuickSight. You're going to have to schedule that refresh at whatever occurrence you want. So depending upon the frequency of your data changing, depending upon your need to show the most real-time version of that data, Spice may not be the option for you. But if you do need to use Spice, you have the ability to schedule a refresh. So just make sure that you set that up. QuickSight or the Spice capacity has been increased. So if you attended this training last year, it was, about half this size. A maximum Spice data set can now be 1 billion rows or 1 terabyte in size total. If you use the direct query language, this is really great for large data sets in Redshift. Redshift has been optimized for handling large data sets and for QuickSight dashboards so that they render quickly. It also automatically pulls in the latest version of data. So if you have, if you're using Redshift from your CDR S3 bucket, as long as that data in that bucket has been updated, it will automatically go through Redshift and automatically show the latest version of data in your dashboard without having to schedule anything. So let's see, Nancy's question, is the feed static? In other words, if you create a SQL query and the underlying data changes, does the dashboard update automatically? If you're in direct query mode, well, I didn't go through that very specifically, but if you're doing the SQL query, then it means that you're not bringing it into Spice, which means, yes, it will automatically, your dashboard will automatically update because you haven't brought it into Spice. You're using like by default, the direct query method. Is there additional training material? Yes, I'll get to that later. Andrew, we're going to get to your question. All right. Next slide. Okay, so now that you've created your data set, or no, sorry, you're still in the process of creating your data set through the edit preview. You have decided what your query mode is. Now you have the ability to add fields, filters, and parameters to your data source before you make it into a data set. So if you have a really large table and you're like, hey, I only need 5 of the 50 columns in it, that'll help improve your dashboard performance. Also, if you need to take different variables and create another variable, you can do that at this time of data set creation. If you need to bring in a column of data, but not all the values within the column, you have the ability then to like also filter that. So here's all the different options that are available on how to do that. It's obviously going to depend upon your data and your data field types, but I just am bringing this up because while you can do this in SAS-Viya or Databricks, if you forget to do it there, or if it's just not possible because you're bringing in data from multiple different places, you have the ability to do this at the time of dataset creation within QuickSight. Great question about multiple users using the dashboard and analysis. I'm going to star that one to make sure I talk about it specifically. The last note that I wanted to make about creating data sets, you'll see this add predictive field. Right now, that is only available if you've integrated QuickSight with AWS SageMaker. And for most of our users, that doesn't apply to us, so I'm not going to cover that. All right, next slide, please. All right, so once you have selected your query mode, made all of your field filters and parameter changes that you want, you now have the ability to finally add your data to finalize the data set creation. You would select the blue button in the upper right-hand corner, and then you'll get to select whether it's a data set source, upload a file. Most of the time, you're just going to want to select data set. You will then see it when you go back to data sets on the overview navigation panel of QuickSight. If you ever have questions about a data set, you can come back in and open it, and you can see a publishing history, what assets within QuickSight are using this data set, and any additional properties that you've set up for that data set. You have that ability too. If you've gone through all of this work and you're like, oh, I don't like it, you can hit the cancel button and it'll just take it away and then not create it as a data set. You can also then save and publish it when you're ready to go. Oh, I misspoke. The add data. This is where you can join multiple data sources together. That's what I meant by add data. So my apologies, let me retract that. So if you need to have data coming from your CDRS3 workbench and you have a flat file, you can add data to a data set and combine those together within QuickSight. I hope I didn't create any confusion with that, and my apologies if I did. All right, next slide. So now that we have published our data set, by default, it belongs to you, the owner. So it's only visible to you. So to the question about, hey, I'm an analyst on a team working with, others, how do we make sure that, one, we have access to everything? This is where you want to make sure after you create your data set, go back to the data set navigation panel and select the 3 stacked dots, and you're going to want to add it to a folder. So saving your assets in the restricted shared folders is the way to grant everybody with the proper role in that shared folder access to that asset. That applies to data sets, analyses, and dashboards. If you also ever want to go back and edit a data source or a data set, you can come back to data sets, click on the 3 stacked bars and select edit. And then this will take you back to the previous screen where you can go in and change your fields, filters, parameters, add data, all that cool stuff. All right. Next slide, please. So after you have a data set, you can now build an analysis off of that. You can select, either go to an existing analysis that is in a shared folder or that you started before. You can always go back to the data set, and then those 3 stacked bars, you can create an analysis directly from that. Multiple different ways to get there. If you need to create a new analysis, because it's your first time, you would hit the new analysis button in the upper right-hand side, and then you'll get the pop-up window to select all of the data sets that either you own or you have access to. And then you will select the data set that you want to build your analysis off of. All right, next slide. So when you create new, you select the data set. You have the opportunity to review information about that data set. So it'll give you the name of the data set at the top, and then underneath you can have a summary about, kind of where it is, what sources it pulls from, and the usage down below. So this will let you know if somebody else is using a data set somewhere else, it'll show that tally down below. So if you want to use it in an analysis, because this is the first time you're creating it, you would select use an analysis. You can also edit the data set from here as well. And worst case scenario, you can delete your data set. If your data set is being used by an existing analysis or dashboard that's shown in the usage below, you won't be able to delete the data set. You'll have to first delete the dashboard and the analysis. So QuickSight has tried to hard code the prevention of deletion from the ground up. Instead, you have to go from the top down and delete things to finally get rid of a data set. Okay, question about logos and stuff S3, the workbench. Can we save logos and stuff to S3, the workbench? I don't know about logos, but I do believe you have the ability to upload logos directly into an analysis. Yeah. Okay, Jazz, I see your question about not seeing your organization when you tried to add a HARP role after selecting the CCS program. If you don't see your organization, I'll cover that at the end about how we can get you set up, get your group set up within QuickSight. All right, next slide, please. All right, so now that you've selected your data set and you want to create your analysis, the first thing that pops up is a big blank page. So this is the space where you get to now start adding stuff in. You can create all the different visual data types that are there. QuickSight does have a new version of what this looks like, but you can always toggle back to the old version, which these screenshots are of. But this is kind of like the basic starting place for every new analysis. All right, can we go on to the next slide? Because we're going to just kind of show you all the functionalities within them. So your blue navigation header is going to be pretty critical for how you want to get in and do things within QuickSight. You can undo things if you don't like what you created. You have the ability to undo that under Edit. If you ever need to add parameters or add a calculated field, you can do that under Data. And then Insert is where you can add in additional visual data types within that single page. Sheets are what QuickSight calls like different tabs that'll show up at the top or different pages. So you can add additional sheets to your into your analysis that will become your dashboard. If you want to create different versions because you want to test it out, you can duplicate it so that you have kind of two slightly different versions. If you need to rename anything, add information, that blue navigation bar is going to be where it's easiest to go to find all of these things, even if the UI has changed within QuickSight on you. Next slide, please. So when you want to get started, field wells will pull up the data sets that are in your analysis. If you need to add in a second data set, right, because the way we navigated, we selected one data set, made an analysis. If you need to add in another data set, you have the ability to do that under data set and then the edit button. You can go in and you can select the blue button of add data set. And then that will give you another option then in this drop down bar underneath data set. If you need to add a new sheet, you hit the plus sign next to sheet 1, and then you'll have some options. You can do either a tiled layout or I forget the other one. Most of the time people go with tiled. And then paginated reports we don't have turned on, but if that's something that's interests your group, let me know. And then once you are ready to add a new sheet, you then hit the blue button for add. All right, next slide. I'm glad I answered your question, Nancy, about yes, you can add additional data sets to an analysis. You don't have to make it into one big one. Can one sheet read from two different data sets? Yes. You can also have multiple sheets where you only use one data set on one and two data sets on another, and a third on a third data sheet. So you're not required to use all data sets per sheet. I hope that answers that. So different visualization types. So under the old UI, they have the little icons that show different visual types. You can kind of navigate over them and it'll pop up to say which one is which. But you really have a lot of options. Mark, I'm not forgetting your question at the very beginning about the box plots and the sorting issue. I need to follow back up with you because I still can't recreate that, and neither could QuickSight support team. So we've been struggling with that, trying to recreate it. But I should also see if that is still an ongoing issue for you. You also have the ability to put in custom visuals. So I guess, yes, to the question about logos, you can put in logos, but it actually comes from a URL, not like an image that you embed within the application. It has to come from somewhere else on the web. So yes, I answered that question. I just hope this answer is better than the last one I gave. Yes, you can use geospatial images in QuickSight. That's the map where you can go geospatial down to like lat long and postal code. I'm not familiar with radar charts, so I'm going to defer my answer on that till later. All right, next slide, please. So if you want to add, after you've added your visual, you can add filters. So this is where you can select the field that you want to add filters onto in your visual. You can have it be either include or exclude. There's a lot of different options to go through on that. Next slide. You can select parameters. So if you want to create dynamic controls that are like, if the user selects state, that automatically filter this other variable to these fields, you can do that using the create a new parameter field. Next slide. All right, and you can create actions, and then you can also change the settings for a dashboard. So actions are ways that you can kind of apply different controls across multiple sheets if you want, so that if a user on the first sheet filters for something, you can apply that filter throughout the rest of the sheets. And then if you ever want to come back and, when you selected the tiled layout at the beginning, if you want to go to freeform, or if you want to do a classic, you can come back in and you can edit all of those changes, play with them around in this section for settings. All right, next slide. So after you've fine-tuned your analysis and you're ready to test it out with your UAT team or your QA team as the actual dashboard, you want to publish, right? Remember, analysis dashboard is just a published analysis. So you'll select the 3-dot icon, you'll get publish dashboard, and then here's where you can publish as a new one, create the name that you want. And then when you go to advanced publish options, this is where you're going to have the ability to select how you want your end users to interact with your dashboard. So do you want them to have the filter controls, yes or no? Do you want them to enable printing or enable PDF download? You have the ability to control those settings at the time of publication. If you want to be able to, within a visual, drill down from state to county without having to go to the controls at the top, you have that ability to select those. Sorry. Once you've finalized all of that, you're then ready to publish your dashboard, and then you hit publish dashboard at the bottom. Next slide. So just like data sets and analyses, the dashboard will automatically be shared with you. not into a shared folder. So after you publish your dashboard for the first time, you'll want to go back to the navigation page where the for dashboards and select the 3 stacked dots so you can add it to a folder. Now it is possible to share a dashboard across multiple of your shared folders. So if you want to leave it in your dev folder, you can do that. You can also move it directly to your prod folder for your end users to access. Go ahead and do that as well. You can add it to multiple different folders if that's what makes sense for you. Next slide, please. So let's talk about all the different ways you can navigate to sharing dashboards within QuickSight. Next slide. So we talked about shared folders. So we set up each group with like a restricted share folder, and that structure of folders is shared based upon your HARP roles and permissions. You can also share with an individual user. So if that person is outside of your HARP org, you can add an individual user. So when you go to the share dashboard icon in the upper right-hand corner, you'll get a shared dashboard pop-up. So here you will see who it's currently shared with, if it's in shared folders, and whether or not it's available for everyone in the CCSQ QuickSight account. If you want to share with an individual user, you'll use that lollipop icon search on the left-hand side, and you can type in their HARP ID or their email address. It'll search for them. We now have over 22,000 users in QuickSight, so if the search takes a little more than like half a second, that's why. You can also search for groups. So each shared folder has a role, and that role is like a group. So you could have it be, your HARP org and your UAT tester you want to share it with. And then you also have the ability to share, like I said, share it with everyone in QuickSight. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, so here's the adding to their shared folders. You only have the ability to add to a shared folder that you have permissions to. So if you want to share it with another shared folder, you also have to have permissions in that other shared folder to do that. Because I'm supporting everybody, I can grab a screenshot where it shows that. But that's not a very common scenario. So most of the time you just want to go into your own groups folder, and you can move it from the prod, dev, test, or UAT. Next slide. So individual users. So when you start typing in a name, you'll get a whole bunch of different options. And then under the blue add drop down, you'll get to select. Do you want them to be a viewer of the dashboard, or do you want them to be a co-owner? Co-owners can only be added if that person's an author. So a HARP org's developer or a deployer role would be a co-owner. If you are only a viewer, you can only be added as a viewer, as an individual share. Next slide. Same thing with groups. So you can add it to like your group's UAT user group if you don't want to like move it to that individual folder. You have the ability to view or be a co-owner on that as well. Most of the time, it'll just be a viewer. Next slide. And then if you do want it available for everyone in QuickSight, you can just toggle over to be everyone in QuickSight. And then it'll show you a second option, whether or not it's discoverable in QuickSight. So this means that you would have it be visible on that dashboard page. So by default. So Alice's question, do people need to have a HARP role to see a dashboard? No. So by default, anybody with a HARP ID can come in and see a dashboard that has been made available for everyone in QuickSight and has been set as discoverable in QuickSight. If you want to get access to one of the shared folders in QuickSight, you will need to go to HARP and request those roles to get access to those shared folders. All right, next slide, please. You have the ability to also deliver dashboards by email. So it's called a schedule in QuickSight. So in the after you selected the dashboard, in the upper right-hand corner in the blue bar, there's like the little watch icon or a little clock icon. Here's where you can select where if you want to deliver your dashboard as an email. The hitch in this giddy up is that the users have to have HARP IDs. So you can't email a dashboard to somebody who doesn't have a HARP ID. So you can't just randomly send it to whoever you want. It does have that person does have to have a HARP ID in order to receive a dashboard by email. Next slide, please. Embedding dashboards. I think there was a question about embedding dashboards, so let me see if I can answer that here. So if you're a CCSQ LOB like iKeys or EQRS, you have your own standalone application. You can create your dashboards in QuickSight the same way that we just reviewed, but you have the ability to then embed that dashboard in your application. So your users log into your application and can see that same dashboard there. All the functionality, all the data is exactly the same. The only thing that'll get removed is that top black part that says like QuickSight. That part gets removed. So it's just the blue bar and everything below it is what gets embedded in your application. So you can share dashboards for registered users, so meaning anybody with a HARP ID or EUA ID. QuickSight calls those registered users. I provided the link for how to embed them for your registered users. If you do end up wanting to embed those, please do reach out to us because we have to add the URL domain to be permissible to allow the embedding dashboards, but everything else is you can do yourself. QuickSight also offers the ability to embed for anonymous users. That means users that don't have HARP IDs or EUA IDs. This is will be turned on for public sharing. So we have a group who's working on embedding dashboards on a publicly available CMS website. We're working with CMS to get that turned on. But if this is a use case that meets your group's need, please do reach out to us so we can get you on the list because we're working on groups on how to roll that out. So there was a question about, can we do API connections and export paginated reports from QuickSight? There are no available API connections yet. Embedding dashboards is the only real way to work with QuickSight to get something out of it. And then paginated reports require an additional add-on service. So if your group is interested, reach out to us on the Slack channel, Help QuickSight, and we can work through that with you. Reminder is that the paginated reports only applies to people with a HARP ID. So if you're looking at paginated reports as a way to get it to somebody without a HARP ID, that's not going to work. All right, next slide, please. Okay, access to QuickSight. Next slide. So again, if you do nothing, you can log into QuickSight. You will be a default reader role, and you will only see dashboards that have been shared with everyone in QuickSight. If you want to get access to your existing org shared folder, you have to go into HARP and you have to request a specific role to that shared folder. Next slide. So you'll log into HARP. You'll select request a role in HARP. The program you want is going to be CCSQ QuickSight. And then you will go to the next page and find your HARP organization name. Select that, and then you're going to want to select which role you want. Security official role is just used within HARP, meaning that it will only approve other role requests for your HARP organization for CCSQ only. It does not right now have an impact on your ability to access QuickSight. You'll need a different role to get within your shared folders group. Next slide. So I probably should put this the other way. So which QuickSight role should I select? Here's a table that shows you what each role is and what it grants you access to. So since each shared folder has 4 subfolders, you have a prod, UAT, test, and dev. This is where you're going to want to pick the role that makes the most sense for what you should have access to. A deployer is the one who can move dashboards and assets around between different folders. So a developer, you can edit and change something that's in the test folder that was put there by your deployer, but you can't move it forward to like the UAT folder. That's only a deployer. But for the group who said, hey, I don't see my HARP org when I log into HARP, that means that we haven't set you up with a shared folder. So reach out to us either on Slack, or if you are a new group to CCSQ and you're working with your HARP onboarding team, that you can request access to a shared folder within CCSQ QuickSight through them. Either path gets us connected and will get you set up for a shared folder. Next slide. All right, so getting access, where do you find all this information other than the slides I just presented? The new CCSQ Data and Analytics portal has all of the request access information for QuickSight. So same information here that I presented in the slides is on the portal. So go there, has all the same links, same information. If you get stuck, please reach out to us on Slack. We're here to help. Next slide. Workbench integration. At the time of when we set you up with the shared folder, we'll ask you if you also have a Workbench folder that you want us to integrate so that you can move your data from SAS Viya to QuickSight via the Redshift instance, or if we're also starting to collect information about your Databricks workspaces so that we can, as we roll out that functionality, we can get you integrated as well. Last slide. So for the question about, hey, I really want some more tutorials, and hey, I really want to know about other stuff about QuickSight that wasn't covered here, Amazon does a really great job. The first place that we tend to send users is their QuickSight user guide. So this is searchable, it's online, and QuickSight refreshes it anytime and every time that they have a new feature release or feature change. Amazon also provides free training sessions around a lot of more in-depth capabilities within some of the things that I highlighted today. I would strongly suggest checking out the virtual workshops. These are recorded videos from either live in person or directed trainings from Amazon. Last I looked, they have over 60 videos. It's really, you learn about a lot of like cool stuff. You get good ideas about how to frame your data in a really cool visualization. Also, QuickSight, it's a supported product from Amazon, so they're constantly coming out with new features and new releases. So stay up to date on their documentation and videos here. And then, as always, sometimes our questions and situations are unique to just CCSQ. So we have peer-to-peer as well as technical support available on our Slack channel, Help QuickSight. I think I've covered all the questions that came up in the chat. If I didn't, I know that I have one person that I need to come back to about the radar charts. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us on Slack. We're here for you guys.
And then just a quick reminder about Q&A in general. We're going to be sharing all of the Q&As from all of the sessions on our Confluence space under each individual session. There will be a link for the slide deck, Q&A, and then any additional notebooks that might have been shared or other resources. So, and any questions that come in potentially after a session or didn't get answered, we'll be reaching out to presenters and seeing if they can get those answered for us, and those will be published. It just might take us a few days to get all of that information out to everyone once we track all the answers down. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. At this point, that is going to wrap up our session.